Toronto's Bangladeshi community stands in solidarity with a murder victim 200 kilometers away.
Everybody knows Canada is a peaceful country, right? And where is it? You know, like if there is no peace, how are we gonna be safe?
People turned out to honor and demand justice for the Owen Sound restaurant owner allegedly beaten to death outside his business. Why some in his community say the attack was racially motivated.
If the Premier thinks his Greenbelt scandal is going away, he's wrong.
Plus, why some say the resignation of the housing minister is not enough. What critics of the Greenbelt land swap deal are still calling for.
I made in a donut, one of those mini donuts covered in sugar.
What kind of food did you have?
I had hot dog and ice cream.
And from the food to the rides, people get treated to one last dose of fun this evening as the CNE officially comes to a close. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Thanks for joining us this Labor Day Monday. We're beginning tonight along Toronto's Danforth, where Ontario's Bangladeshi community turned out to honor a murder victim from Owen Sound. Sharif Rahman was killed last month outside his restaurant over what police say was a dispute over an unpaid dining bill. But people in the Bangladeshi community fear the motive is more sinister. Anam Khan has our top story tonight.
In a display of solidarity, nearly 100 people from Toronto's Bangladeshi community lined the Danforth today, calling for justice for Sharif Rahman, the Owen Sound restaurant owner killed outside his business last week.
We are very sad. It's a dangerous thing and police cannot action immediately. I want to action immediately.
Some even saw this as an opportunity to teach their children about justice and equality in Canada.
This shouldn't happen to anyone. And they should know, they should protest.
Owen Sound police say Rahman was attacked on August 17th outside his restaurant, the Curry House. Officers say 3 men allegedly attacked him following a dispute over an unpaid dining bill. Police released these images of 3 suspects running away from the restaurant. The 44-year-old restaurant owner died last week, leaving behind a wife and a 6-year-old daughter. Hundreds of people attended his funeral just over a week ago in Owen Sound.
He did things like raise money and feed different community groups, or take the profits from dinners and give them to community groups on top of the hours that he donated. Everybody loved him that met him.
His family moved to Canada a decade ago. After settling in Owen Sound, Rahman opened the Curry House, sharing his passion for food. Many in the Bangladeshi community feel the attack was racially motivated. They say what happened to Rahman could have happened to any one of them.
Never they think as a Canadian, they think we are immigrants.
Everybody knows Canada is a peaceful country, right? And where is it? You know, like if there is no peace, how are we gonna be safe?
The protesters say their fight for justice is not just for Rahman or the Bangladeshi community, but for everyone to be treated with respect and dignity. Anam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
Turning now to that bombshell announcement from Queen's Park today. Ontario's housing minister has resigned from cabinet. Steve Clark had been under increasing pressure to step down after the province's integrity commissioner found he failed to properly oversee the process that led to the Greenbelt land swap. Ali Chiasson has that story.
Housing Minister Steve Clark announcing his resignation on Labor Day, which puts into motion a series of cabinet changes. All this when audiences are still in holiday mode. It certainly softens the bombshell that this is, but the opposition is not letting this slide.
But if the Premier thinks his Greenbelt scandal is going away, he's wrong.
The Premier needs to open the books and waive cabinet privilege. We have to get to the bottom of this.
In his resignation letter, Clark said, "I realize that my presence will only cause further distraction from the important work being done." NDP leader Marit Stiles says they're not distracted.
We have another integrity report by the commissioner that I've requested looking at the Premier and his connections and the developers that were attending his family gatherings. We've got the RCMP considering whether to lay charges to investigate. Where does it end? Do we have to look now at every other policy and deal that this government is making and who's benefiting.
The last thing any government wants is a scandal that continues and generates multiple mini scandals.
Associate Professor of Political Science at U of T, Chris Cochran says this will be hard for the Premier to weather.
Obviously, when you have land swaps and insider information and conflicts of interest and unclear lines of accountability, nobody really knows who was calling the shots. Nobody seemed to be accountable to anybody. There are questions raised about some of the people involved in these transactions and whether they were, for example, lobbying illegally or not disclosing their influence. And when you add all of that in with the word RCMP investigation, obviously this is a cloud that no government wants to be under.
The now former housing minister goes back to being just MPP Steve Clark. Replacing him is Government House Leader Paul Calandra, all part of this impromptu cabinet shuffle. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
As Calandra takes the housing portfolio from Clark, some other cabinet changes to tell you about. The Premier is moving Prabmeet Sarkaria to Minister of Transportation, previously held by Caroline Mulrooney. Mulrooney will become President of the Treasury Board, while Stan Cho will take over Calandra's post as Minister of Long-Term Care. Now, as Ali Chiasson reported, while Steve Clark is leaving cabinet, he is staying on as MPP, and that will be near his Kingston riding. Celeste DeCare went to his riding today to see how his constituents and fellow local politicians are processing his decision to resign.
Quite shocking, actually. Steve Clark did the right thing by stepping down.
To Ontarians, I want to say very sincerely that I apologize.
For weeks now, calls for Steve Clark's resignation over the Greenbelt land swap scandal have escalated from residents, environmental advocacy groups, and the opposition.
It sort of insults the intelligence of Ontarians to think that the Premier and his minister knew nothing at all.
And while it seemed like a long time coming, his decision to step down came as a shock, especially to those that have worked with him so closely over his years in office.
I have to say sad. You know, I'm really sorry that it's come to this. Knowing Mr. Clark as I do, this is not something that he came to lightly. But you know, he set his own interests aside, and he's put the interests of the greater good first and foremost.
Clark has represented Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes since March 2010 and has been re-elected 4 times. As for how his resignation could impact his current role, the mayor of the township of Elizabethtown-Kittley hopes it doesn't.
I really think at the end of the day, it's not going to move the needle very much.
Clark got his start in politics as the mayor of Brockville right out of university in 1982, gaining him the title of youngest mayor in Canada. While the MPP has dedicated his career to serving the public, Clark wrote in his resignation letter that it's his responsibility to adhere to the principles of ministerial accountability.
I don't profess to know all the details of what went on with the issue that led to this, but we have to have some trust in our public institutions.
And while Clark's resignation was the seemingly next step in the Greenbelt scandal, some say it's not enough.
I think they still need to return that land. The protected land needs to be returned to protection. Build elsewhere. There's lots of places to build.
Celeste DeCare, CBC News, Brockville.
As hot as the news out of the legislature was today, it was the hot weather that had a lot of people talking, and it still hasn't cooled off much this evening. 25 degrees in Toronto at this late hour, and tomorrow is expected to be the hottest and muggiest of this late season heat wave, just in time for kids to get back to class. Tyler Cheese has more on how parents and schools are preparing.
He has a sunscreen and his water bottle and everything they need for school. I actually even got, you know, they give a little newsletter for the beginning of school, and they said that the first day was going to be freezy day, so that's going to be really good for the kids.
Well, I hope they give them plenty of water, obviously, and probably keep them in the shade. But I think they're pretty good at that.
As long as they're not like in the sun with no shade for a long time. If they're prepared, they have sunscreen, hats. I'm not too concerned.
With at least one more blast of hot weather for the city this year, schools are preparing not only to welcome students back, but to make sure they stay cool as well.
Most of our schools have some form of air conditioning or partial air conditioning, so that can even mean the gym, the library, that cooling place they can go to. But our staff are also used to making sure they're monitoring exertion, making sure that they're always in a cool space outside.
The Toronto Catholic District School Board says it's ready for the heat, but is also asking parents to send their children to school prepared.
We always make sure they've got their sunscreen on, they're wearing breathable clothing. A hat is a really good idea. Also making sure that they bring some sort of refillable water bottle.
Though temperatures in the 30s aren't out of the ordinary for this time of year, children's health care experts say it's important to be on the lookout for dehydration and heat-related illnesses.
Younger kids are more susceptible and less likely to be able to express themselves or advocate for themselves when they're struggling. So, in a very hot environment, the risk is higher the younger the age.
He says there are some symptoms that, if caught early enough, can help prevent more serious illness. So parents and teachers want to be on the lookout for fatigue, confusion, and a lack of engagement. Now, in addition to everything the schools are doing, the city also has a number of cooling spaces available that anyone can access, and a full map of those spaces is available on the city's website. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
And lots of us likely looking for spaces to cool down tomorrow, expected to be the peak of this late season heat wave. Colette, let's get right to you. This extreme heat is certainly a big departure from the relatively wet and cool August that we had.
That's right, Chris. We couldn't get to 30 degrees in August, but boy, are we really blowing it away here as we're ending this Labor Day weekend. Some of the daytime highs from today, Toronto, even up at 34, that wasn't quite a record. We'll certainly take a run at the record for tomorrow. You're going to take a run at it in Ottawa tomorrow, too, with that high being close to 33. The record's 33.1. Had a chance today, Windsor, because it actually is a lower record today, but didn't quite get there. But does it matter whether it's a record when we're talking about the heat like this? And it's not just these temperatures, of course, it's the humidex values. Part of the reason, certainly, why we have the heat warning. It extends into northern Ontario, into Quebec as well. And this carries on for another few days yet to about midweek, and in fact to about Thursday through the Ottawa Valley, because we'll see a front that will be moving through. Showers and thunderstorms will develop along that, but really not until Wednesday. A bit earlier in the day for southwestern Ontario, later in the day into the GTA, and it's probably not till so late that I expect the transformation to be more towards Thursday for Ottawa. Tomorrow morning, though, in Toronto, 23 degrees. That's at 8 a.m., feeling closer to 28, and it won't stop there. We'll get into the specific long-range forecast coming up, Chris.
Just extraordinary. All right. Thanks, Colette. To Lake Erie now, where a man drowned earlier this afternoon near Port Colborne. It happened at the Sun Retreats Shirkston Shores Resort around 1:15 p.m. Niagara police say a person tried to assist the man after he became distressed while swimming. A rescue helicopter that was in Toronto for the air show was able to locate and recover the man from the lake. Officials say he was transported to hospital in critical condition, but was later pronounced dead. An investigation is ongoing. And in Toronto, a woman was stabbed in the lobby of an apartment building this morning around 8 a.m. in the area of Weston Road and Humber Boulevard. The woman was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Police say a man was arrested at the scene, but the cause of the stabbing is still unknown as that investigation continues as well. And over to Jane and Wilson, a man is seriously injured following a collision involving a vehicle and a dirt bike this morning. Police responded to a call in the area at around 8:30 in the morning. The man was transported to hospital in serious but non-life-threatening condition. Labor unrest has been a major topic this year, with multiple job actions across the country and right here in Ontario. As workers marked this Labor Day, many union leaders are hoping they celebrate things that have been achieved and reaffirm what they're still trying to accomplish. TJ Deere has more from Windsor.
About 1,000 people marched in the streets of Windsor to celebrate Labor Day. Although union leaders recognize the importance of having unions, they also understand the challenges they face.
In terms of working conditions and in terms of wages and benefits, those are all core issues, not only important to labor groups, but obviously to the community as well.
The main thing is the cost of living. Housing, food prices, everything, and the cost is going up so fast, we can barely even keep up. So moving forward, we have to be strength in numbers to make sure at the collective bargaining table that we move forward and make sure that our members are taken care of.
this year's festivities seem to carry a little extra importance, given the ongoing auto talks between Unifor and the Detroit 3 automakers, as well as construction of the new Stellantis EV battery plant. The leader of the union that employs workers that will be working there says investment in the plant and electric vehicles is where the future of labor lies.
The investments that are happening in Windsor-Essex County, it's huge. The monies that are happening just because of the battery plant and the facility and us moving and manufacturing a battery electric vehicle, all the investments is very big. And this is a labor town, and it'll always be a labor town.
At a gathering after the parade, participants could get food and drink and take in a classic car show. Each union also had their own tent where others could learn about them. The interim leader of the Windsor and District Labor Council says when unions win, they lift everyone up, not just the workers. This was echoed by Petton.
Our own well-being, our community's well-being, and labor's well-being are all intertwined.
While the road ahead for workers is long in terms of getting what they want, at least they were enjoying themselves today.
Happy Labor Day!
TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
And in Toronto, thousands also turned out to march in the city's Labor Day parade.
This point in time when we see that workers are having a harder time making ends meet with inflation and affordability crisis, people not being able to afford their rent, their food on their table, medication for their children, it's an important time for us to remember workers have power and we need to seize that power.
The parade has a long history in Toronto and is seen as a day for workers to celebrate labor victories and struggles. Labor Day has been a statutory holiday in Canada since 1894. Welcome back. If you didn't get to the CNE yet this summer, well, you're in trouble. You've officially run out of time. Another year of Toronto's annual fair has come to a close tonight. Greg Ross brings us a wrap on this season's fun and what changes are in store for next year.
One last chance to enjoy the rides, one last chance to take in the carnival games, and for some lucky kids, one last chance to indulge.
What kind of food did you have?
I had hot dog and ice cream. I made in a donut, one of those mini donuts covered in sugar.
It's also one last chance for kids to let loose before the start of school tomorrow.
I don't know what teacher I'm going to have, but I'm nervous.
Do you have to go back to school tomorrow?
Yes.
Are you excited about that?
Yeah, because I'm starting a new grade.
What grade are you starting?
I'm starting grade 1.
Oh, that's a big responsibility.
I know.
Mayor Olivia Chow says she came with her grandkids, but not before marching in the Labor Day parade.
It's to celebrating the workers that lift up all the communities and help build our city.
With the sun shining, there was plenty of incentive for people to come out and enjoy the final day of the X. CEO Darryl Brown says their attendance numbers overall were very good this year.
You know, even though we had 4 days of rain early, people just came out in full force and are doing it again today.
Brown says they expect to at least match last year's total attendance of 1.56 million people, which was their strongest in a decade. He's hopeful they can surpass 1.6 million this year, which would be a good way to start what will inevitably be a busy off-season.
So we lose 360,000 square feet of programmable space next year.
The CNE is losing that space because of TTC expansion, construction on the new Ontario Line subway, a new hotel and e-gaming facility that is getting built on the site, and expansion of BMO Field.
Well, I think we're still gonna shoot for having the same amount of rides. You know, we had 61 rides this year. Obviously, that takes a lot of space up. We're gonna lose parking, so people better start taking more people take the GO train and TTC, I suppose. But we're not going to cut down on our programming.
They've already started working on plans for next year in terms of what the layout is going to look like. They say they want to offer the same product with a smaller space. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
From the CNE on down to Windsor, it is swelteringly hot right across the region. Colette, as we head back to you, this is a very unseasonal week across Ontario, and it can certainly be dangerous as well.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. With the heat warning in place, of course, everyone needs to take it easy, stay hydrated, look out for signs of heat exhaustion, but it's also a good time to remind everyone in terms of how quickly a car can heat up and why you cannot leave any living thing, not just thinking about kids or older folks, but pets as well in the car. This is with an air temperature of 27, and of course, we're looking at air temperatures in the low 30s, and within 10 minutes, it can feel like the upper 30s, and then that temperature gets easily to 40 or above when you start approaching 15 to 20 minutes. But it's even less than that because of what we're looking at with our temperatures. So it's not even just popping into the store for 2 minutes. You know, it always ends up being more than 2 minutes. So really heeding that warning, if you would. And just looking at when this is going to change, it's going to stick around for a few days. I know it can be so oppressive for kids back to school. If there's no air conditioning in those classrooms, really needing to take it easy for them as well, making sure they have lots of water. And as we see that front that's going to be coming through about midweek, it'll bring some showers and thunderstorms first into southwestern Ontario. It will begin to have an impact on the temperatures for Thursday for not just southwestern Ontario, but through the GTA. It may be more towards Thursday before we see that towards the Ottawa Valley from like Kingston to Ottawa, just because of the timing of that front and that new air mass that will move in. Overnight temperatures, yes, there are a few high teens, but in many cases, we're still talking about the lows being near 20 degrees. For Toronto, a high tomorrow, 33. Yes, we're looking at a potential record here lasting into Wednesday. For Windsor, 32 tomorrow, 30 into Wednesday. The records here are a little bit higher. And for the nation's capital, you may have a record on Tuesday as well. Does that matter so much? Just knowing how hot it's going to be and that your humidex values too are going to be in that 40 range. So with caution all the way through Thursday, and then things begin to cool down in this region, Chris.
All right, thanks, Colette. Finally, tonight, we're spotlighting the High Park Little League. They organized a special event today to get more girls excited about the game of baseball.
3, 2, 1, go Diamonds!
Watching the news.
All-girls event. It's named after High Park's all-girls team, the Diamonds. And last year, they participated in the Ancaster World T-Ball Tournament. They won the girls' division and defeated the boys, too, making history as the first girls' team to do it in its 50-year history. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll leave you now with some of the sights and sounds from the last day of the CNE